Next, I'd like to introduce Michael Popkin, PhD, who founded Active Parenting Publishers in 1983 in Kennesaw, Georgia. And soon after, he introduced the first video-based parenting education program, also called Active Parenting. Recently revised, Active Parenting Now has helped millions of parents develop cooperation, responsibility, and courage in their children. Since then, Dr. Popkin has written and produced more than a dozen video and discussion programs, including Active Parenting of Teens, Families in Action, 1, 2, 3, 4 Parents, and Parents on Board, Building Academic Success through Parent Involvement. His latest book is Taming the Spirited Child, Strategies for Parenting Challenging Children Without Breaking Their Spirits. Prior to founding Active Parenting Publishers, Dr. Popkin practiced family therapy in Atlanta. He's widely known for his expertise in the field of parent education and has appeared on over 200 programs, including CNN and The Oprah Winfrey Show. Dr. Popkin and his wife Melody are the parents of 2 young adult children, Megan and Ben. Dr. Popkin.
Thank you. I think my 7 minutes are up. Thanks. I was going to say, I don't think any of us really know the length of 7 minutes, including myself. I also want to say that I'm no expert on borderline personality disorder. I don't pretend to be. What I do pretend to be, however, is an expert in parenting. And think about that choice of words. I've been teaching parenting since 1974 when I was a master's student at Georgia State. My father was a camp director. I knew I loved kids, got interested in psychology. Thought I'd just sit in on this parenting class that one of the professors was doing at a church in Atlanta, and I was amazed. Parents would hear a new concept, a skill, go home and try it with their kids, come back and share these wonderful stories of how things were changing week by week. And I knew pretty early, by the time I was 25 or 26, what I'd be doing the rest of my career. It'd be in parenting education. Since that time, I guess it was 5 years later, I was sitting at a conference like many of you, and my mind started to wander like many of yours. And I thought, gee, wouldn't it be neat if we could take 2 new inventions that had just appeared on the marketplace and get them to talk to each other in a way that could teach parents effective ways of raising their children. Any of you know what those 2 inventions were? Video cassette recorder and the desktop computer. Thank you, Stephen Jobs. And we actually had a prototype in 1982 of an interactive system, but it was much too expensive for the organizations that would have to buy it in order to use the parenting program. So after being depressed for a couple months, I came up with the idea of dropping the computers and developing what became the first video-based parenting education curriculum. We launched that in 1983. It took off like gangbusters, gave us the platform to develop lots of other parenting programs, and we've been doing that ever since. One of the things that I like to do, because of my job as president of Active Parenting Publishers, is I get to travel around the country and other parts of the world talking to groups about parenting and parenting education. And I always begin with a quote by Jacob Bernowski, who wrote, anybody want to remember what he wrote? A long time ago, The Ascent of Man, about the origin and the evolution of human intelligence. And he made an interesting observation. He said, we've made sort of a deal with Mother Nature. On the one hand, our children will be difficult to raise. But on the other hand, their capacity for learning will enhance the survivability of the species. Now, how many of you would agree with Bernowski that raising human children is both important and difficult? Yeah. How about that it's at least as important and as difficult as being an effective waiter or waitress, or server as they're called now? Sure. How about that's at least as important as difficult as being an effective teacher? Okay. How about that it's as important and as difficult as doing what many of us do as therapists and educators and parent educators? But of those 4 jobs, being a parent, being a server in a restaurant, being a teacher, being a therapist, educator, the only one of those jobs that doesn't get training is parenting. We have done such an injustice to parents in our society by putting them out there and expecting you can just do the job because you were a child, because you're genetically equipped to do it, because you have good parents or didn't have good parents, so you can do the opposite of what they did. We wouldn't do that with any other job. And that's part of the problem with why we are so slow sometimes seeing change in therapy. You know, I learned a long time ago as a young therapist that if I wanted to see movement in my patients, and I worked with a lot of kids and a lot of teenagers, that I needed to get the parents to do things differently. And by empowering the parents and working through the parents, could really see some rapid change. And Then I realized again that parenting education was a much more cost-effective way to supplement therapy. And what I've learned through this conference today, and gosh, thanks so much for putting this on. This has been wonderful. Perry and Frederick and the rest of you that helped put this on. That the skills we've been teaching for years in parenting are the same skills you guys are talking about for using with borderline personality patients. You know, limit setting, communication, anger management, recognizing feelings, communicating feelings, winning them over in some ways. There's, the parallels and the combinations are so incredible that it'd be exciting for me to see people using parenting education programs like whether it's active parenting of teens or one of the other programs that some of you might use with borderline parents, and not just because their kids will benefit from it, whether they're teenager children, but because they'll start using those skills with their spouses and with themselves and with other people. As someone said earlier, we're really talking about human relation skills. Now, you've heard people talk a lot today. Before we break, I've got what, 6 minutes left? Is that how much I've got left in my 7 minutes? We do a lot of activities. The idea in video-based parenting education is you watch a brief video, you discuss it, the leader in the group will get you to apply it to your family, and then we do experiential activities to get people moving and involved, and these are 2-hour sessions. So get a partner. This is about a 2-minute activity. If you get a partner, someone sitting next to you, stand up and face each other. It's been a long day. This will be good. Get your blood flowing for a second. Decide who's going to be A and who's going to be B. You need to decide that, just arbitrarily, an A and a B. Say to someone and say, I'll be A, you be B. Okay? Now, don't do anything so far except to put your palms up against the person in front of your palms, just very gently. And when I tell you to, and not until I tell you to, I want the A's to gently push against the B's. B's, you can do anything you feel like in response within the laws of the state of Georgia. And then I'll give you the next instruction. So A's, gently push against B's. A's, push a little harder. A's, push a little harder. A's, stop pushing. Okay, now everybody sit back down, please. Very simple activity. What did B's do when A started pushing? How many B's pushed back? Wow, how many B's just gave in? I got a really cooperative group. Now, when I said earlier that, and you agree with me that raising human children is both important and difficult, how many of you agree that raising human children that have a borderline personality disorder is probably even more challenging and more difficult? Yeah. What do you think would happen when you push against a child? I sometimes call kids spirited children, but I realize that borderline personality disorder is a slightly different phenomenon, although there's some similarities. But what do you think is going to happen when you push against those kids? They're going to push back. And if you push harder, they're going to push back harder. And any of you get into what we call a power struggle, where you're pushing real hard and they're pushing real hard, and then what happens in real life is that somebody will escalate it and you go from power to revenge. You hurt me, now I'm going to hurt you back. And you can't win that power struggle with any kids. And from what I'm learning about borderline personality, because the stakes get higher and higher with them, if you try to overpower them, the trump card that every kid has to play is, I'll fail. Because I know you want me to succeed, and if I feel like you're being disrespectful or abusive or over-controlling, I can always defeat you by failing. And what's the biggest failure out there? Suicide. Yeah, and it's the equalizer. I was thinking earlier this morning, I've never thought about this before, but ultimately none of us can choose our own time of death unless we choose to commit suicide. So it's the ultimate powerful act of saying, I can beat you because I can control that, and you can't. That's a tangent, but what's not a tangent is power struggles have to be handled more strategically and more sensitively than just trying to overpower kids. And that's what we try to teach parents. Everything from communication skills to encouragement skills to mutual respect, participation, things that go hand in hand with life in a democratic society. So I didn't cover the things that I talked about in the book, but they're in there if you'd like to read some more of in your book, your handouts. And be glad to join my panel mates over there for some more questions. Thank you.